As you should be aware, young women in today's society are commodities, and the vast majority of them are having a harder and harder time making ends meet and convincing men to make long-term commitments. It goes without saying that it will become increasingly difficult for the majority of women living in today's society to persuade men to make a long-term commitment to them and care for them, when the majority of men do not consider these women to be marriage material, mother material, or companion material. If you examine members of Generation Z, you will see that a significant proportion of these individuals are disoriented and struggling with a variety of mental health problems. Since of this, it is quite difficult for a man of resources to take seriously the women of that generation because they are not stable personalities and they have no problem selling their moist vice grip in order to make money on the side. When you have a generation of women who don't prioritize having kids and getting married, that in and of itself is a recipe for disaster. Not only that, but a large portion of Generation Z either doesn't want kids or they are willing to put it off like their previous generations before them. When you combine these two factors, you have a recipe for disaster. It is quite clear that the current path being followed by the United States will, over the course of time, result in nothing positive and thus marks the beginning of the sad demise of Generation Z. However, as I constantly emphasize to you guys, you should never feel sorry for these individuals if they wind up being unmarried and living by themselves. You can't tell these women that so whatever happens to them will be whatever happens to them. These women had the opportunity to turn their lives around, and some of them still have the opportunity to turn their lives around if only they would stop sleeping around, stop selling themselves, and start getting into relationships. I have absolutely zero compassion or empathy toward any of these women in any way. This dilemma with Generation Z leads us to this story by Forbes titled "Gen Z Women Postpone Parenthood Because of the Hurdles Working Millennial Monks Experience." So let's have a look at how these women are faring now that men aren't committing to relationships as often as they used to. A few years ago, Generation Z overtook millennials as the generation with the most knowledge and experience in real-world situations. The abilities and perspectives that they have acquired in the short span of their lives will have an impact on the future of work. However, it is their self-assured and independent views outside of work that will make them a generation that will be difficult for everyone to ignore. Z is driving up the rate of female involvement in the labor force, which is simultaneously creating new demand for homes, consumer appliances, automobiles, and other essential items for beginning a new adult life. As a direct consequence of this, the number of newly formed households accounts for a sizable portion of the annual growth in overall consumer spending. Their conclusions will generate a snowball effect that will ripple throughout the economy. However, their job goals are fueled by witnessing how millennial moms are being handled by the American government and corporations, and this will cause a snowball effect. The findings of a poll conducted by the luxury real estate agency Ruby Home indicate that the experiences of millennial mothers are having an impact on the career goals of women belonging to Generation Z. As a direct consequence of this, women of Generation Z intend to delay having children and have a smaller family size than millennial women. When asked why they don't want children, a recent survey of more than 1,000 members of Generation Z found that 27% of respondents didn't want children when asked why they didn't want children. 90% of the women polled said they enjoy the independence that comes with not having children, and 70% said they value the time they get to spend alone themselves. All right, gentlemen, so that last portion right there summarizes the rooster carousel that we have been witnessing for years now, which is the mentality that these young ladies have of delaying stable relationships with males at an early stage in their lives. Why have the two generations prior to this one been doomed to failure, which has resulted in these ladies being doomed to die alone? The older generation holds the same mentality as does the younger generation, because more than 1/4 of the women who are currently of childbearing age do not anticipate having children in the near future. The already low birth rate in the United States is expected to continue its downward trend in the coming years. So, as a society, do we have any reason to have hope? Remember that many guys of that generation have given up on life and aren't even interested in partnerships anymore when you value being single early on in your prime and riding the dick more than being family-minded when you're a woman. When you value these things more than being family-minded, if I'm being really straightforward with you, the time that women decided to put men in their place and do whatever they pleased with their bodies without regard for the long-term effects of their actions was the moment that men decided they were finished with partnerships. Gen Z men today are part of a generation that was brought up with the message that women are on par with or even superior to them. A man is not necessary for a woman. Men are complete and utter garbage and all of that BS, and as a result, they are finished with women. Therefore, the main point of this article is that females would rather not have romantic relationships. They are, however, ignoring the fact that men do not want to make long-term commitments to modern women regardless of the generation they belong to. This is especially true today. Those modern women are commercialized and have no difficulty selling themselves for a small amount of cash. When you can just buy the milk instead of the cow, what's the point? Let's proceed. This is a problem because if Generation Z delays motherhood, industries that are counting on further strong growth will be forced to cut back on production and deliveries from suppliers. This, in turn, will cut back on revenue for America's small business owners, which will ultimately affect everyday people. This has occurred in the United States of America previously. During the early stages of the baby boom, and Generation X has been pointed to as a primary factor in the economic downturn of the 1980s. Also, according to Work Labs, which is the research arm of the Mom Project, in the absence of federal policy for paid parental leave, the most crucial things for working parents are workplace support and adequate benefits. Expectant parents are keeping a close eye on their supervisors, the culture of the firm, and the human resources departments to get a sense of how the company treats parents who are already employed there. In certain instances, they are using that information into their decision over whether or not to continue working for the organization or whether or not to continue on their path toward becoming parents. Why should they feel any more comfortable coming out if they don't see other parents working in their office being praised for their candor and transparency? Gentlemen, they are not discussing the fact that when women do become pregnant, they immediately visit their doctors in order to have the child aborted. It's not like all of these women are using protection so they're getting knocked up. They're just not staying knocked up. I agree that the working culture plays a role in whether or not women choose to get pregnant, as does the economy. But at the end of the day, it's not like all of these women are using protection. When I looked at the number of women who protested the bodily autonomy of terminating kids in the Roe v. Wade situation, it told me that these women were participants in leading kids or wanted to if they got knocked up. I drew this conclusion because of the number of women who protested the bodily autonomy of terminating kids. In addition, these women were taught not to have children, to delay having children, and to concentrate on themselves and their jobs when they were younger. However, the way millennials are treated in the workplace is the primary reason why these women do not want to have children. I don't buy it when people say that the conditions of their workplace prevent them from having children. You are aware of what prevented people from having children, right? Early terminations as a result of womanism, times like what we are experiencing today, and less and fewer marriages are both trends that are now being seen. In my judgment, this factor, and not the conditions of the workplace, is the primary contributor to the falling birth rate. It's unlikely that there will be an increase in the number of children being born, given that men are less likely to enter into committed partnerships and marriages these days. This article ought to have addressed it, but they seem to be switching things around. Because a man and a woman are more likely to engage in sexual activity when they are cohabitating and have some level of commitment to one another, I believe there is a greater possibility of the couple having a child together. In addition to that, there is a feeling of consistency. That's all there is to it. Yet, in this day and age when men are withdrawing from partnerships and women are seeking independence, the institution of motherhood is in its twilight years. In any case, let's proceed by stating that the findings of the Ruby House study are consistent. The promotion of positive mental health is ranked as the second most important life objective for members of Generation Z by 97% of Generation Z members. Women who do not want children often cite concerns about their mental health as one of their motivations. Gents, a quick note, it is important to exercise caution when choosing a partner from within the Gen Z group because many of the women in that generation are struggling with mental health difficulties. Not only that, but a good number of these women are unable to function without the assistance of some kind of medicine, which will alter the way that they behave and the choices that they make on a daily basis. Therefore, I don't want you to use extreme caution. It's possible that the individual you're dealing with suffers from mental health issues and is addicted to drugs as a result of the prescription they take for those issues. Therefore, bear that in mind. That is the reason why you see persons who have 1,500 different genders. It is important to keep in mind that this generation of women is not stable because they are confused, have no idea what to do with their lives, and suffer from mental illness. Let's proceed in accordance with the findings of the study on the motherly state of motherhood in 2022. Even Generation Z working women who already have children are uncertain about whether or not they want to have more children than 27%. Which is significantly higher than the percentage of millennials who are skeptical, which is only 22%. You can point to career issues as the reason why 40% of women are dissatisfied and wish to combine parenting and a job, but they need a different arrangement at work to make that possible. They also state that their supervisors should better support them in their role as mothers by being more proactive in interacting with them to better understand their needs outside of work. It's possible that the United States of America does not make it easy for women to leave and rejoin the workforce. If this is the case, then motherhood while working will always appear to be an intolerable burden for women in the future who place high importance on their jobs. In the event that this scenario plays out, the United States will experience yet another baby bust during the current state of the recession. Men, take note that this article gives the impression that the workplace is either accountable for or a major component in the decision-making process of Gen Z women over whether or not to have children. However, what about the reality that these women can't keep a man to save their lives, so that they may have the additional cash necessary to make it easier for them to raise children? In addition to this, the way the article is written makes it seem as though the authors are solely thinking about the possibility of the woman having a kid while she is unmarried and not in a relationship. When you consider how it is written, it does not appear that this would be something that would appeal to women who are already in committed relationships. If you ask me, the most concerning aspect of this essay is that it appears to target single mothers as its audience. If that is the path that we choose to take, then there is no turning back. Even with a partner, it seems like it would be challenging to take maternity leave and then go back to work once the baby is born, but at least there would have been additional cash to help pay a lot of the costs. I appreciate that it would be difficult to do both of those things. Therefore, the fact that they were staring in that direction shouldn't have been the case. Whether or not to have children is a choice that must be made by the organization. That is something that these wives and their husbands ought to discuss with one another. Oh, I forgot, they aren't going to be married because the males are leaving. Therefore, the possibility of them getting married has been eliminated. Using that line of reasoning, everything makes perfect sense. The alternative, which makes less sense to me, is to blame the firm. Even if these women do not qualify for paid maternity leave, their husbands may be able to take care of them until they are ready to return to the workforce if they are married and become pregnant. But considering that the majority of mothers are single mothers, it is not hard to understand why these women are rethinking their decision to start a family. Do not make any attempt to save them. You should compensate them for what they have to provide. Take care of yourself and get on with your life. Just take it easy, put your feet up, and let this clown show burn to the ground.